Today, we're going to talk about a piece of local folklore that's just, well, it's unbelievable. It's a story of pure grit and defiance, straight out of the history of Woodward, Oklahoma. This is the tale of one man against a force of nature. Let's get right into it. That's the kind of wisdom you hear out on the prairie, right? It's practical, it's smart. When something that powerful is roaring down on you, the only thing a sane person does is get out of its way. But see, every rule has its exception. And here in Woodward, that exception was a man named Hank. He heard all that same wisdom, looked up at that same angry sky, and he made a very, very different choice. To really get why Hank did what he did, you've got to understand the man himself. He wasn't just big. Folks said he was wider than most barn doors. He was a fixture on the landscape, as sturdy and imposing as the land he worked. And then there's this little detail, which tells you just about everything else you need to know. Wearing the same pair of boots for over a decade, that's not just about saving money. It tells you this was a man of stubborn permanence, a guy so rooted in his world that even his boots refused to give in. And then there's this story. They say he once punched a rattlesnake. Now, did that literally happen? Who knows? But it perfectly captures the kind of defiant spirit we're talking about here. Hank just didn't back down, not from anything. And this was the world he'd built with his own two hands, the world he was about to refuse to surrender. It was a cattle ranch out on the plains of Woodward. It was his home, his life's work, and the place he and his wife were raising a whole barn full of new calves. This is what was at stake. So let's go to that specific fateful night, April 9th, 1947. This is the night the legend was truly born. The night that the wind, as they say, wasn't just blowing. It was coming for blood. For pretty much everyone who lived through it, there was only one way to describe that sound: a freight train. Just a deafening, grinding roar that promised nothing but total destruction. It was the sound of pure terror. But you see, that's not what Hank heard. In that same terrifying noise, Hank heard something completely different. He heard a challenge. He heard trouble that was just asking for a fight. And that was the difference in this man. So, with the lights flickering and that freight train getting louder, he had about 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes to make a choice. He could hide. That's the logical thing to do, right? Save yourself. Or he could stand. Stand and try to protect every single thing he had built. He chose to stand. And with that one decision, we go right into the heart of the storm. This is the moment a story turns into a legend. This is where a man goes toe-to-toe with a tornado. Now, this wasn't panic. This was a procedure. He calmly tied the stall doors shut with his lasso rope to protect the animals inside. He slapped his hat on tight, grabbed hold of a solid fence post, and dug those 12-year-old boots deep into that red Oklahoma dirt. He was bracing for it. And then it happened. The sky started to boil with those sick, unnatural colors. That boiling black and green that anybody on the plains knows means one thing: the storm is right on top of you. And then it hit. The whole world just dissolved into chaos. Shingles ripped off the roof. Trees snapped like twigs. A whole grain bin, we're talking a huge metal building, sailed right past him like an empty soda can. And right in the middle of all that destruction, all that unstoppable force, there was Hank, the immovable object. He just didn't move. Then, as if things weren't crazy enough, a calf broke loose. Hank, still gripping that post with one hand, lunged out and grabbed the terrified little animal with the other. The wind, they say it was like 2 tons of force, was trying to peel both of them right off the face of the earth. And in that moment, in the middle of that roar, with his world literally coming apart around him, Hank just dug in deeper. He looked that storm in the eye and, well, he said no. What happened next? This is the core of the legend, because as the story goes, somehow the wind listened. His sheer act of defiance, it actually seemed to work. The storm, it started to pass him by. And get this, that whole life or death struggle, from the second it hit to the last gust of wind, the whole thing lasted less than 60 seconds. An absolute eternity of chaos, packed into less than a minute. When the sound finally faded, the damage was just unbelievable. Half the barn, gone. The trees stripped completely bare. Every single window in his house was blown out. But look at that last line on the report. Amidst all that wreckage, there was Hank. Status? still standing. And this is the picture they paint of him, right in that moment. He's covered in mud from head to toe. He's bleeding from his ear from the pressure. One hand is still clamped onto what's left of that fence post, and the other is holding a trembling calf. Battered, but absolutely unbroken. And this, for me, this might be the most telling part of the whole story. After surviving the unsurvivable, he doesn't collapse, he doesn't scream. He just lets go of the post, lets the calf go, and walks back into his busted-up house like it was just another Thursday. And that quiet strength is what made him a legend. The moral of the story, the line that people in Woodward still repeat, is this one right here. It frames the tornado not as some random weather event, but as a bully that picked a fight with the absolute wrong guy. The story of Hank is just an incredible testament to the spirit of the people who settled this land. It might be folklore, sure, but it tells a powerful truth about resilience. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful force of nature is human will. For more stories that bring Woodward's past to life, just visit woodwardshoutouts.com and subscribe for